Maple Ridge was the kind of town where people waved to each other from their front porches, and children's laughter echoed across quiet streets lined with maple trees. The town was small, with only a few thousand residents, but it had a charm that made everyone feel like family. Neighbors knew each other's birthdays, favorite pies, and the stories of the families who had lived there for generations. Among all these stories, however, one family stood out, not because of scandal or fame, but because of a mystery that had quietly gripped the town's attention: the silent toddler Lily Warren. Lily was 2 years old. She had bright, inquisitive eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her. She could follow conversations perfectly, turn her head toward the voice of a familiar adult, and respond with gestures, facial expressions, and occasional hums. But she had never spoken a word, not a single syllable. Her parents, Emily and Thomas Warren, had tried everything: whispering softly to her in lullabies, pointing to picture books, showing her flashcards, singing to her, and even consulting speech therapists who specialized in selective mutism. Nothing worked. The WRNs had first noticed her silence when she failed to respond to simple commands like "come here" or "say mama." Doctors assured them that some children simply develop speech later than others, and that Lily was otherwise healthy, meeting milestones in walking, fine motor skills, and cognitive reasoning. Still, the worry gnawed at Emily. She often found herself watching Lily play alone in the living room, cradling a stuffed rabbit or lining up tiny wooden blocks with meticulous precision. "It's like she's trapped inside her own head," Emily whispered one evening, brushing a stray curl from Lily's forehead. "She's listening, Thomas. I know she is, but she can't tell us anything." Thomas, a quiet man by nature, usually responded with gentle reassurance. "She'll come around," he said. "She's smart, look at her. She understands more than anyone gives her credit for. We just have to be patient." But patience was not easy when every interaction with Lily reminded them of how fragile communication could be. Family gatherings were particularly challenging. At birthdays or holiday dinners, Lily would sit quietly observing cousins chatter excitedly, her wide eyes scanning the room, yet never speaking. Relatives often mistook her silence for shyness, but the Warrens knew better. Lily wasn't shy. She had personality, curiosity, and even a stubborn streak. She would insist on choosing her own toys or leading the family dog around the yard, and when something displeased her, she could throw a tantrum that shook the house, but always without a single word. Warren's neighbors also noticed Lily. Mrs. Hensley, who lived next door, often remarked how extraordinary the child was. "She watches everything like she's memorizing it," Mrs. Hensley said one morning, sipping coffee on her porch. "It's almost unnerving. I've known many children, but she's different." Emily nodded politely, though she felt the comment like a soft jab. Different. That word followed them everywhere. "She's not different," Emily whispered to herself after Mrs. Hensley left. "She's just figuring her own way." Despite the challenges, the Warrens worked hard to create a safe, stimulating environment for Lily. Their home was filled with colorful books, soft carpets, and small toys arranged neatly in baskets. Each day, Emily and Thomas tried to engage her with gentle games designed to encourage verbal interaction. They would sit on the floor with picture books, nomming animals, shapes, and colors. "Duck," Emily would say, pointing to a bright yellow bird. Lily would tilt her head, gaze at the duck, and then return her eyes to Emily as if silently acknowledging the connection. Thomas would try the same approach with toys. "Ball," he would say, rolling a small red sphere across the carpet. Lily would pick it up, inspect it, and then hand it back, never speaking. Over time, Emily and Thomas realized that Lily's silence was not passive. It wasn't disinterest or inability. It was deliberate. She observed, she processed, and she responded in ways that others couldn't interpret. This realization made them both anxious and awed. Their daughter was extraordinary, yet the world outside did not always recognize her intelligence. Maple Ridge was largely a friendly town, but even in such a community, subtle assumptions were hard to avoid. People often whispered about Lily at the grocery store or at the park. "Poor little thing," someone would say, or "she must be so shy." The Warrens ignored the well-meaning remarks, knowing that their child's silence was not a deficiency. It was a secret strength, a form of communication they were still learning to understand. Despite her silence, Lily had one way of expressing herself clearly, through her eyes. Those who spent enough time with her learned to read them almost like a book. Curiosity, joy, and frustration passed across her gaze like waves. One moment, she would beam at a puppy chasing its tail. The next, she would narrow her eyes at a broken toy, her tiny hands clenching as if to protest. Emily and Thomas became fluent in this silent language. They could often tell when Lily wanted water, needed a nap, or longed to be held. But the one thing they couldn't discern, yet, was what she had seen outside the safety of their home. It was a Thursday morning when things began to shift. The sun streamed through the living room windows, illuminating the scattered toys on the carpet. Lily sat on the floor, meticulously lining up her tiny blocks in a precise row. Her fingers moved with care, each block touching the next with perfect alignment. Emily watched, her tea cooling in her hand. There was a sense of anticipation in Lily's posture, though Emily couldn't have explained why. She simply knew her daughter felt expectant. Suddenly, a sound from the street drew Lily's attention. The soft crunch of tires on gravel, the low hum of a passing car. Something made her head snap toward the window. Her eyes widened. Thomas, who had just entered the room with a laundry basket, noticed the reaction. "What is it, Lil?" he asked gently, though he knew she wouldn't answer. Lily didn't respond. She stood, still silent, and walked toward the window, pressing her tiny hands against the glass. Her gaze fixed on something or someone outside. Emily joined her at the window, peering over her shoulder. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance. The street was quiet, the mailman delivering letters, a few kids biking past. But Lily's intensity suggested otherwise. She backed away from the window slightly, then returned, almost as if rehearsing an invisible conversation. Emily felt a chill. It was subtle but unmistakable. The way Lily moved, the way her eyes darted and then held, suggested she had seen something important. Something that needed to be remembered. Days passed, and life in Maple Ridge continued with its normal rhythm. Yet the atmosphere in the Warren home was subtly charged. Emily and Thomas became hyper-aware of every object out of place, every sound from the street, and every reaction Lily had. Their daughter's silence, once simply puzzling, now felt like a protective shield around a hidden truth. They didn't know what it was, but they sensed it, an invisible thread connecting Lily to something beyond the ordinary. The town continued to whisper. Friends of friends commented on Lily's silence, some offering advice, others quietly speculating. But in the Warren household, a quiet determination grew. Emily spent hours researching developmental milestones, speech patterns, and even stories of prodigies who had started speaking late. Thomas reinforced routines, creating predictable patterns that Lily seemed to thrive in. They weren't just trying to encourage speech. They were preparing for the day Lily would choose to break the silence herself. Evenings were the hardest. After long days filled with observation and gentle encouragement, Lily would retreat to her room, stacking blocks or arranging small figurines. She never spoke, but sometimes, when the house was still, she would hum softly, almost imperceptibly, a sound that felt like a whisper to the universe. Emily and Thomas often tiptoed down the hallway to listen, their hearts swelling with both love and anxiety. They knew their daughter was extraordinary. They only didn't yet know how extraordinary. And in that quiet, filled with the hum of an almost imperceptible lullaby, a sense of inevitability lingered. Lily was waiting for the right moment, the right connection, or the right reason to speak. The Warrens didn't know it yet, but the events that would break their daughter's silence were closer than anyone could imagine. The calm, familiar rhythm of Maple Ridge was about to be disrupted in ways no one expected, and Lily, the silent observer, would hold the key to everything. By the time night fell, the house was quiet. The soft glow of a nightlight illuminated Lily's sleeping face, peaceful and serene. Emily and Thomas stood in the doorway, holding hands, their hearts heavy with a mixture of hope and fear. Their daughter's silence had been a mystery for over 2 years. Little did they know that silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a story that would soon shake their world and reveal a depth of courage no one had anticipated. Maple Ridge had always prided itself on its safety. Crime was rare, and neighbors left doors unlocked during the day, trusting the town's calm atmosphere. Yet that trust began to unravel one crisp autumn morning. It started subtly, almost innocuously. A missing toy here, a photo gone there. But by the time the third household reported something strangely taken, it was clear that Maple Ridge had a problem, and it was unlike anything the residents had ever faced. The first report came from the Simmons family. Mrs. Simmons, a retired schoolteacher, had been preparing breakfast when she noticed a gap on the living room shelf. Her late husband's pocket watch, an heirloom passed down through generations, was missing. At first, she assumed she had misplaced it. But when Mr. Simmons returned home from a walk, he confirmed it was gone. Nothing else had been disturbed, no signs of forced entry, no footprints. It was as if the watch had simply vanished. The second incident happened at the nearby Morgan residence. Their son, just 6 years old, ran into the kitchen one morning screaming about a missing toy dinosaur. His mother, initially amused, discovered that several toys were gone, nothing of monetary value, but items with emotional significance, including a stuffed bear that had belonged to her own childhood. By the time the Warrens noticed small items missing from their own home, a garden gnome from the backyard, a small music box Lily adored, the pattern had become impossible to ignore. There was no rhyme or reason to the thefts. Homes were entered without signs of forced entry. Only small, sentimental items were taken. The town, once confident in its safety, began to feel the creeping edge of fear. The local police department, modest in size but diligent, treated the situation with urgency. Officer Ramirez, a tall man in his mid-30s with a reputation for patience and sharp instincts, took the lead. He had grown up in Maple Ridge and knew almost every resident personally. The idea that someone could invade homes without leaving a trace was unsettling. Ramirez's first step was to analyze the scenes. Nothing was damaged, no locks broken, no windows forced. It was as if the perpetrator knew exactly how to enter and leave without leaving a trace. "Look at this," Ramirez muttered, holding up a small photograph he had found at the Morgan residence. It wasn't taken during the break-in. It had been left behind, placed neatly on a chair, almost like a calling card. "They're not after money," he said. "They're leaving a mark and maybe even taunting us." The town, meanwhile, buzzed with theories. At the local cafe, neighbors whispered and speculated in hushed tones. Some thought it was teenagers playing pranks, others suspected a drifter who had passed through town. But no one suspected that these small, peculiar thefts would soon be connected to something far more alarming. Emily and Thomas Warren tried to shield Lily from the growing tension. They kept her indoors more often, checked locks, and spoke cautiously when discussing the break-ins. But Lily's sharp eyes noticed everything. She would sit in the corner, quietly observing the movements of police officers as they inspected the neighborhood. Something about the intrusions unnerved her, not in fear of strangers, but because she understood on some level that these disturbances were personal. She couldn't speak it, but her expressions grew tense, her fingers tapping against each other in silent anxiety. One evening, after another report of a break-in, Officer Ramirez visited the Warrens. He had always been fond of Lily and had noticed her silent intelligence during previous encounters at town events. Emily greeted him at the door, forcing a smile while holding a stack of freshly folded laundry. "Evening, Emily," Ramirez said gently. "Mind if I take a look around? Just routine, nothing to worry about." Emily nodded, feeling a knot in her stomach. She led him inside. Lily was sitting on the living room carpet, lining up her blocks in precise rows. Ramirez glanced down at her. "Hey there, Lil," he said softly. The toddler didn't respond but looked at him with steady, unblinking eyes. Ramirez crouched to her level. "You're smart, you know that. Very smart." Lily continued her meticulous arrangement of blocks, yet Ramirez sensed that she was absorbing everything around her. The conversation, the tension, the whispers of fear in the adult voices. After checking the house, Ramirez stepped outside with Thomas to discuss the latest incidents. "It's strange," Ramirez said, his brow furrowed. "We have no suspects, no method of entry, no apparent motive. And the things that are taken, sentimental items, toys, trinkets, it doesn't make sense." Thomas nodded. "It's unsettling. Lily noticed the shed door was slightly open the other day. I thought I'd misaligned it myself, but maybe it's connected." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "I want to inspect that shed. Alone or with K9 support. We need a new approach if we're going to get ahead of this." Little did they know, that shed would become a pivotal point in what was about to unfold. The town itself started to react to the invisible threat. Parents hesitated to let their children play unsupervised. Residents installed cameras and motion sensor lights. Even simple walks down the street became exercises in caution. Rumors swirled. Some suggested a stalker, others believed a prankster was testing the police. The tension was subtle but persistent, wrapping Maple Ridge in an unspoken anxiety that made the usually cheerful town feel like a stage set for something sinister. Meanwhile, Lily remained unaffected by most of the town's hysteria, except in ways that mattered most. She watched carefully. Her eyes followed strangers on the street, delivery people, even neighbors she had seen dozens of times. Something instinctual inside her processed patterns adults overlooked. She would sometimes point at distant figures or tap her finger on the window sill, her way of signaling awareness. Though her parents couldn't interpret these gestures fully, they noticed her heightened sensitivity and became increasingly protective. On a particularly brisk afternoon, a neighbor, Mrs. Hensley, knocked on the Warren door, concern etched on her face. "Emily Thomas, I just wanted to tell you, the Johnsons' home was entered last night. They didn't lose anything, really, but their son said he saw someone watching the house from the woods behind their property." Thomas stiffened. "The woods behind our backyard connects to those trees." Emily's hand shot to Lily's shoulder. "She might have seen something too," Emily whispered. She looked down at her daughter, whose eyes were already fixed on the backyard. Lily tilted her head and pointed subtly toward the trees, then back at the living room, as if urging them to pay attention. A chill ran down Emily's spine. Though she couldn't understand the meaning, the intensity of Lily's gaze made her feel that the toddler knew more than anyone realized. Ramirez, observing the exchange, didn't comment, but he made a silent mental note. Lily's behavior was unusual, yes, but in ways that suggested she might hold the key to something the adults could not see. That evening, Thomas secured the shed with a new lock and motion sensor light. He double-checked the windows, doors, and even the fence around the yard. But no matter how much they tried to protect their daughter from the outside world, Lily remained acutely aware. She would stand by the window for long periods, eyes tracing the perimeter of the yard, and sometimes emit quiet hums or murmurs when she thought no one was watching. Emily could only watch, torn between pride and fear, wondering what Lily might one day reveal. Officer Ramirez began planning the next step. He had worked with the local K9 unit before, and he considered bringing a dog into the investigation. A police dog could detect patterns, track scents, and perhaps pick up what humans could not. Coda, a veteran tracker, had solved small thefts and missing person cases in neighboring towns. Ramirez believed that Coda might be exactly what Maple Ridge needed to bring clarity to these mysterious break-ins. Meanwhile, the town continued to speculate. At the grocery store, in classrooms, and at the church, whispers grew louder. What if the thief is someone we know? Why aren't the police catching them? It's like they're invisible. The fear, though subtle, began to shape daily life. Maple Ridge residents started locking doors that had never needed locks before. Even casual walks and bicycle rides became exercises in vigilance. Yet amid this growing tension, Lily remained strangely calm, her silence a beacon of focus. She sensed disturbances others overlooked, noticed shadows that moved oddly, and reacted to sounds adults ignored. Her parents didn't understand her awareness fully, but they began to suspect that her quiet observation might not be as random as they had once believed. The child who had never spoken seemed more attuned to the world than anyone expected, and perhaps, they realized, she might hold a vital clue to the mystery that had gripped their town. As night fell, Emily and Thomas tucked Lily into bed, her small body curled beneath her favorite blanket. The wind rustled the trees outside, and the shadows of the Maple Ridge woods stretched across their yard. Emily lingered, watching Lily breathe steadily in her sleep. "I hope she's safe," Emily whispered, "and I hope we can understand her when she's ready to speak." Little did they know, the silent observer in the crib was about to become the center of a story that would shake their town to its core, a story that would involve courage, instinct, and an unexpected ally in a police dog named Coda. The calm days of Maple Ridge had come to an end, and the stage was set for a mystery unlike anything the Warrens, or anyone else, had ever faced. The morning Maple Ridge awoke to a crisp golden sun, there was a restless energy in the Warren household. Emily stood at the kitchen window, watching the wind ruffle the maple leaves outside, her mind preoccupied with the strange events that had begun to haunt their town. Thomas poured coffee and scrolled through the latest reports of break-ins, frustration etched on his face. "It's like the thief is ghosts," he muttered, shaking his head. "No traces, no witnesses, nothing." Emily, still tense from watching Lily silently observe every movement, sighed. "We've done everything we can. Locks, cameras, lights. Maybe it's time the police tried something different." Thomas nodded slowly. He had heard of K-9 units being effective in similar cases. Officer Ramirez mentioned he might bring someone in. Maybe a police dog could pick up a trail that humans can't see. The idea sparked a flicker of hope. If anyone could interpret the world in ways humans couldn't, it might be a dog with training and instincts honed to perfection. Little did they know, this would be the first of many surprises. Later that morning, a black and tan German shepherd named Coda arrived at the Warren residence with Officer Ramirez. Coda was no ordinary dog. His coat was glossy, his eyes intelligent and alert, and his posture spoke of calm confidence. He had been trained in tracking, scent detection, and search and rescue operations, with experience solving thefts and missing person cases in neighboring towns. Children adored him, yet he carried himself with a seriousness befitting a professional. Lily, sitting in the living room, noticed the dog immediately. For the first time in months, she perked up with visible curiosity. Her eyes followed Coda's every movement as he sniffed the carpet and cautiously assessed the room. Emily and Thomas exchanged glances. They had never seen Lily react with such focus to anyone or anything outside their family. "Coda's good with kids," Officer Ramirez said, crouching near the toddler. "He can sense emotions and respond accordingly. Just let him approach at his own pace." Coda padded slowly toward Lily, his nose twitching as he absorbed the scents in the room. He stopped a few feet away and sat down, tilting his head in acknowledgement. Lily, surprisingly bold, crawled toward him and extended a tiny hand to touch his fur. It was as if the two recognized each other immediately. Emily and Thomas were astonished. "She's never been this interactive," Emily whispered. "I've never seen her reach out like that." Coda, trained to respond to cues and human emotions, gently leaned into Lily's hand, allowing her to brush his fur. His calm presence seemed to reassure her, and for the first time, Lily's face relaxed completely, her body tension dissolving in the company of this extraordinary dog. Officer Ramirez observed silently, a knowing smile on his face. He had seen Coda connect with children before, but there was something about Lily that was different. Her silence, her focus, and her responsiveness suggested she was unusually perceptive. Ramirez suspected that Coda might be the key to helping her communicate, and possibly to uncovering the mystery surrounding the break-ins. Over the next few days, Coda visited the Warrens regularly. Each time, Lily's behavior grew more expressive. She hummed softly when Coda was near, mimicked his movements, and even giggled when he nudged her with his nose. The bond between the silent toddler and the police dog became a quiet but powerful connection. It was during one of these visits that something remarkable occurred. Emily and Thomas were tidying the living room when Lily suddenly froze, her eyes narrowing, fingers pointing toward the window that looked out at the backyard. Coda's ears perked up immediately. He rose from his sit and padded silently to the window, tail stiff, gaze fixed. Emily followed Lily's pointing finger and felt a chill. The backyard shed, the same one Thomas had reinforced, had a door slightly ajar. No one had touched it since the last check. The sight of it, along with Lily's intense focus and Coda's reaction, made Emily's heart race. Something was there, something that demanded attention. Officer Ramirez, called in immediately, examined the shed with Coda leading the investigation. Coda sniffed the door, the perimeter, and even the nearby trees, his nose twitching with every new scent. He let out a low, almost imperceptible growl, signaling that he had picked up a trace. Emily and Thomas watched, helpless yet hopeful, as the dog began circling the shed methodically. Lily's small hand clutched the edge of her mother's sleeve. She didn't speak, but her eyes conveyed urgency. Emily leaned closer and whispered, "It's okay, baby, we're here. You're safe." Lily nodded slightly, though her gaze never left Coda and the shed. It was as if she were waiting for the dog to confirm what she already knew in her mind. Coda finally stopped in front of the shed door, sitting rigidly, tail high, and letting out a soft bark. Officer Ramirez understood immediately this was the critical point. "All right," he said, turning to Thomas. "Open it slowly." Thomas, hands trembling slightly, unlocked the door and pushed it open. Inside was darkness, broken only by the shaft of sunlight streaming through a small window. Dust swirled in the air. Coda stepped forward cautiously, sniffing every corner. Then he froze, ears forward, nose low, tail stiff. He had detected something specific, something unusual. Lily, on tiptoe, pressed her small face against her mother's shoulder, pointing again to the back corner of the shed. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of fear and recognition. Officer Ramirez followed her gaze and noticed what appeared to be a small pile of items, children's toys, photographs, and trinkets, all carefully arranged but out of place. It was subtle, almost overlooked, but Coda reacted instantly. He moved to the pile, sniffed each item, and barked once sharply. Officer Ramirez's heart pounded. This was more than just a shed. It was a collection point for the items taken during the string of break-ins. Someone had been meticulous, intentional, and bold. And now their cache was exposed, thanks to the partnership between a toddler and a police dog. Emily knelt beside Lily, trying to soothe her. "Do you know who did this, sweetie?" she whispered, though she didn't expect an answer. Lily didn't reply verbally, but she pressed her small fingers to her lips, then pointed toward a tree outside the shed. Her gesture was deliberate, precise. She was indicating something, someone that had been missed by adults, overlooked until now. Officer Ramirez moved to the spot Lily indicated and noticed faint footprints leading toward the back fence. He recognized them as belonging to someone familiar in town, someone who had access to multiple homes without raising suspicion. This revelation sent a ripple of unease through him. The break-ins were no longer random. They were orchestrated, calculated, and deliberate. Coda sat obediently, occasionally glancing at Lily as if acknowledging her guidance. The connection between them was extraordinary. The dog understood the toddler's silent signals, and the toddler in turn had finally found a way to communicate indirectly through the dog. This moment, unremarkable to outsiders, was monumental for the Warrens. Their daughter, who had never spoken a word, had just guided them to a crucial piece of evidence. Emily and Thomas exchanged looks of astonishment. She saw this," Emily whispered. Thomas nodded, swallowing hard. "She had to have, there's no other explanation." The shed revealed the first tangible clues in the case, but it also highlighted a new dynamic. The Warrens realized that Lily's silence was not a limitation. It was a different form of perception. Her mind worked in ways that adults could not easily comprehend, and with Coda as her interpreter, The invisible thread she had been following finally became visible to the world. Over the next few hours, Officer Ramirez cataloged the items, photographing and bagging each one for evidence. Emily and Thomas stood close to Lily, who remained calm, her fingers occasionally brushing Coda's fur as if seeking reassurance. The toddler, who had once been silent and seemingly detached, was now central to uncovering the mystery that had unsettled Maple Ridge. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Warren backyard, the mood had shifted. There was tension, yes, but also relief. Progress had been made. The partnership between Lily and Coda had transformed from a curious observation into a vital investigative tool. It was clear to all present that the child's silence was not emptiness. It was intelligence, awareness, and a latent ability to communicate when given the right medium. Emily kissed Lily's forehead, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I think you helped us today," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Lily responded with a soft hum and a slight nod, as if acknowledging the praise without fully comprehending its significance. Thomas placed a hand over his wife's and squeezed. "This is just the beginning," he said. "If she can do this, if she can help us see what she sees, then maybe we're finally on the right path." Maple Ridge, once serene and complacent, was now the stage for a mystery that had grown larger than anyone anticipated. And at the center of it all was a 2-year-old toddler who had never spoken, and a police dog who understood her silent language. Together, they had revealed the first tangible clue in a case that would test the limits of intuition, courage, and trust. As night fell, Coda curled near Lily's crib while Emily and Thomas watched from the doorway. The house was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves outside and the faint hum of Lily's whispered sounds. The Warrens understood one undeniable truth: their daughter's silence was no longer a mystery to be solved. It was a tool, and together with Coda they would face whatever came next, whether danger, revelation, or truth. Maple Ridge was about to witness a story unlike any it had seen before, a story in which the smallest voice would become the loudest guide. And for Lily Warren, the silent toddler who had never spoken, this was only the beginning. The morning after Coda's first visit to the Warrens' home dawned clear and crisp, with sunlight streaming through the maple trees lining the quiet streets of Maple Ridge. But inside the Warren household, the atmosphere was anything but ordinary. Emily moved quietly through the kitchen, preparing breakfast while keeping an eye on Lily, who sat cross-legged on the living room carpet. The toddler's eyes, bright and alert, flickered occasionally toward the window, then toward the hallway as if expecting something or someone to appear. Thomas entered, carrying a cup of coffee, and paused mid-step. "Look at her," he said softly, gesturing toward Lily. She was lining up her blocks again methodically, each one touching the next with near-perfect precision. But there was something different this time, an intensity, a focus that bordered on purposeful. "I've never seen her like this before," he murmured. "It's like she's thinking about more than just toys." Emily nodded. "It's Coda," she whispered. "Since he came yesterday, she's changed. She's more present, more aware, more herself." Their observation was far from casual. Over the past 24 hours, Emily and Thomas had watched as Lily seemed to develop a connection with the dog that went beyond simple affection. She followed him with her eyes, mirrored his movements, and even hummed in response to his soft whines and low growls. The bond, though silent, was profound. Coda had become a mediator in Lily's world, a bridge between her isolated perception and the external reality of the town. Where adults saw a quiet child, Coda sensed intelligence, intuition, and awareness, qualities that he, trained as a police dog, could recognize and respond to instinctively. By mid-morning, Officer Ramirez arrived again, accompanied by Coda, to continue the investigation and assess the Warrens' backyard shed more thoroughly. As the dog entered the living room, Lily's posture changed. Her body stiffened slightly, her fingers drumming lightly on the carpet and her eyes fixed on Coda as he approached. Slowly, deliberately, she extended a tiny hand, brushing her fingers through his fur. Coda responded instantly, lowering his head and allowing her touch. The moment was quiet yet electric, a silent understanding passing between them. Emily watched, holding her breath. She's actually responding," she murmured to Thomas. "It's like she knows he's different, like she trusts him in a way she doesn't trust us sometimes." Thomas nodded gravely. "I think she recognizes that he can help her, that he can see what she sees." Officer Ramirez knelt near Lily. "She's sharp," he said quietly. "Much sharper than anyone realizes. Coda's presence is giving her a kind of confidence, a way to communicate without words. This might be exactly what we need to get ahead of the break-ins." The next hour passed in a mixture of observation and tentative interaction. Coda explored the living room, sniffing corners, furniture, and the carpet. Lily followed him, pointing occasionally at areas he investigated or tapping her fingers lightly on objects. Each gesture seemed intentional, calculated, as if she were providing instructions or drawing attention to subtle details that adults could easily overlook. Emily and Thomas realized that the silent bond forming between toddler and dog was more than mere companionship. It was a form of communication. Lily had spent her life observing without speaking, but Coda offered her a channel through which her awareness could manifest in actionable ways. This realization brought a mixture of awe and trepidation. Their daughter, long considered fragile in her silence, was proving to be resilient, intuitive, and remarkably capable. After breakfast, Officer Ramirez suggested taking Coda outside to begin a preliminary sweep of the yard and surrounding area. Thomas hesitated. "Are you sure? She's never been outside with him like that," he said, concern evident in his voice. Emily placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "She's ready," she said firmly. "She needs this, and so do we." Outside, the crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. Coda immediately began a methodical inspection of the yard, moving in a zigzag pattern, nose to the ground, tail low but alert. Lily followed closely, her small feet padding softly across the grass. She occasionally pointed to areas of interest, tapping her tiny fingers against leaves, the edge of the shed, or the base of a tree. Each gesture was deliberate, and Coda responded, sniffing or pawing at the spots she indicated. Thomas observed from a distance, awestruck. "I've never seen her like this," he muttered. "She's directing him, guiding him. It's like she's leading the investigation." Emily nodded. "It's incredible and terrifying. She's so small, and yet—" Her voice trailed off as she watched Lily's intense concentration. Officer Ramirez watched as well, his mind racing. He had worked with countless K-9 units and young children, but rarely had he seen such a seamless, instinctive connection. "This is unusual," he said quietly. "The dog is reading her signals perfectly, and she's reading him in return. They're communicating, silently but effectively. This could change the entire investigation." As they approached the shed, Lily froze again, her tiny hand extended toward the slightly ajar door. Coda stiffened immediately, ears erect, tail still, and low growl rumbling in his throat. Emily's stomach twisted with apprehension. "She saw something," she whispered. "She knows something, I can feel it." Officer Ramirez gestured for Thomas to open the shed slowly. As the door creaked, Coda stepped inside first, sniffing cautiously, moving with deliberate precision. Lily followed, her eyes scanning every shadow, her small fingers brushing against the rough wooden walls. She stopped at a corner of the shed, her gaze fixed and pointed. Coda responded instantly, pawing at the exact spot she indicated. Emily held her breath. "It's her, she's found it," she whispered. The corner revealed a small pile of objects carefully arranged but distinctly out of place. Children's toys, photographs, and personal trinkets, items missing from homes across Maple Ridge. Coda sniffed each one, alerting Officer Ramirez to the significance of the discovery. This was the first tangible evidence linking the break-ins to a single source, and it had been uncovered through the collaboration of a toddler and a police dog. Emily knelt beside Lily, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You did this," she whispered. Lily responded with a soft hum, pressing her fingers gently against Coda's fur, acknowledging the praise without speaking. Thomas's eyes were wide with amazement. She really guided him, he said. This is incredible. The Warrens realized that the bond forming between their daughter and Coda was not merely emotional, it was functional. Through him, Lily's silent observations were transformed into actionable guidance, revealing patterns that had eluded adults and investigators alike. This revelation shifted their perception of Lily's silence from limitation to power, from mystery to capability. As Officer Ramirez documented the scene, Lily remained focused, occasionally pointing or tapping to ensure Coda examined each item thoroughly. Emily and Thomas watched, simultaneously proud and fearful, understanding that the child who had never spoken was now central to uncovering a network of events that had unnerved the entire town. By late afternoon, the shed was secured and evidence catalogued. The Warrens led Lily back inside, where she immediately sought Coda's company. She hugged the dog, pressing her face to his fur, while Emily and Thomas shared a quiet glance. Their daughter, once silent and enigmatic, had revealed a capacity for insight and guidance that no one had expected. Officer Ramirez, observing the scene, made a quiet note in his journal. "This is unprecedented," he murmured. "A toddler, nonverbal, directing a K-9 unit in real time to locate evidence. Extraordinary and invaluable. We need to explore this bond further. It may be the key to solving the case." Evening fell over Maple Ridge, casting long shadows across the Warren yard. Lily, exhausted but calm, sat beside Coda, her tiny fingers stroking his fur rhythmically. Emily and Thomas stood nearby, holding hands, their minds racing with the possibilities. Their daughter's silence had always been a source of concern, but now it had revealed itself as a unique form of perception, an awareness that, when paired with the right ally, could navigate the unseen and the unknown. The Warrens realized something crucial. The world had underestimated Lily. Her quiet observation, once dismissed as shyness or developmental delay, was actually a sophisticated form of awareness. With Coda as her interpreter, she could influence outcomes, guide actions, and uncover truths that would have remained hidden without her. As the household settled into the quiet of night, Emily whispered softly to Thomas, "She's not just a child who can't speak, she's a child who sees. And now she has someone who can help her make others see too." Thomas nodded, a mixture of awe and fear in his eyes. "And the world isn't ready for what she might reveal next," he said, glancing toward Lily and Coda, who now lay side by side, silent and connected in a bond deeper than words. Maple Ridge, still unaware, was about to be shaken by events that would intertwine the perceptions of a silent toddler, the instincts of a police dog, and the secrets of a town that had once felt perfectly safe. And in the center of it all, Lily Warren, small and silent, was beginning to show the extraordinary power of her awareness. Maple Ridge awoke to a brisk, silver morning, with frost glinting on the edges of the maple leaves. The town remained calm on the surface, but beneath its quiet streets, tension lingered like a low hum. For the Warrens, that hum had become their constant companion. Lily's bond with Coda had grown even stronger overnight. Emily and Thomas watched as their toddler followed the dog around the house, her movements deliberate, her eyes sharp, her tiny fingers pointing and tapping at things that adults barely noticed. Breakfast passed quietly, each adult silently observing the child who had begun to command their attention in new, subtle ways. Officer Ramirez arrived shortly afterward, coffee in hand, his expression grave yet expectant. The previous day's discovery in the shed had been monumental, but Ramirez knew it was just the beginning. The pile of missing items had revealed where the intruder had stashed the collected trinkets, but it had not identified the perpetrator or explained the motive. "Coda's ready," Ramirez said, kneeling to allow the dog to sniff the morning air. "And I think Lily is too. This time I want to see if she can indicate something more direct, maybe guide us toward the person behind this." Emily exchanged a nervous glance with Thomas. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. "She's still so small, so vulnerable." Ramirez's gaze softened. I understand, but I've never seen a child read situations like she does. Coda trusts her instincts and she trusts him. If there's anyone who can help us, it's her. Lily, sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet, seemed to sense the weight of the moment. She hummed softly, fingers drumming against the floor, eyes flicking to Coda. As Ramirez opened the door to the yard, she rose quickly, moving toward the dog with purposeful steps. Her small hand rested gently on Coda's back, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, connected in silence. The yard was crisp and cold, each leaf and twig outlined by the frost. Coda immediately began his methodical search, nose close to the ground, ears alert. Lily followed closely, occasionally pointing or tapping her fingers at areas of interest. Emily and Thomas trailed behind, hearts pounding with anticipation, while Ramirez documented each movement. As they neared the back fence, Lily suddenly froze. Her body stiffened, her eyes fixed on the line of trees beyond the yard. She crouched slightly, tiny fingers extended, pointing deliberately toward the shadows beneath the maples. Coda paused, ears erect, tail stiff, and gave a low, resonant growl. The dog had sensed what Lily had already noticed, a faint trail, almost invisible to the human eye, leading into the woods. Emily held her breath. She sees something, she whispered. Thomas nodded, swallowing hard. And Coda can pick it up, this could be it. Officer Ramirez stepped closer to the tree line, motioning for Coda to follow the path Lily had indicated. The dog moved silently, nose to the ground, following the faint scent that trailed from the shed and the surrounding homes. Lily remained close, her small hand brushing against Coda's side, as if guiding him through the invisible markers she had detected. The trail wound through the woods, narrow and uneven, lined with fallen leaves and broken branches. To any adult observer, it would have seemed ordinary, unremarkable. But Coda and Lily moved with precision, the toddler's pointing gestures and the dog's trained instincts guiding them seamlessly. Emily and Thomas followed cautiously, holding hands and keeping their eyes on their daughter, whose concentration seemed absolute. After several tense minutes, the trail led to a small, hidden clearing at the edge of the woods. Here, the frost had begun to melt under the weak morning sun, revealing faint footprints and discarded items that had been reported missing over the past weeks. Coda stopped, nose twitching, tail stiff, and let out a soft bark. Lily's eyes widened as she pointed insistently at one particular spot, tapping the ground twice with her tiny fingers. Officer Ramirez knelt to inspect the area. The footprints, faint but discernible, led toward a small makeshift shelter hidden behind dense bushes. Inside, partially concealed by a tarp, were more stolen items, toys, photographs, and trinkets. Each object had been carefully arranged, yet hidden from casual view. The collection revealed meticulous planning and a deliberate pattern that had gone unnoticed, until now. Emily's stomach tightened. She led us right to it, she whispered, her voice trembling. Thomas nodded, equally awed. This is more than luck, she's guiding us. Lily remained silent, but her small hand rested firmly on Coda's back, her eyes scanning the clearing with an intensity that seemed almost adult in nature. For the first time, Emily realized that their daughter's silence was not a limitation. It was a form of perception, a way of observing and interpreting the world that adults could not fully understand. Ramirez carefully documented the evidence, taking photographs and bagging the items for later examination. This is significant, he said quietly. We now have both the collection point and the trail leading to it. Whoever is behind this is organized, deliberate, and close to the community. And Lily, she's the first to point us in the right direction. Emily and Thomas exchanged a look of mixed pride and concern. Their daughter, silent for so long, had just become central to uncovering a network of criminal activity that had unnerved their entire town. The realization was overwhelming. After securing the site, the group returned to the Warrens' home. Lily, exhausted but calm, curled up next to Coda, who lay beside her, tail slowly thumping in a steady rhythm. Emily and Thomas watched silently, their hearts heavy with both awe and apprehension. Their child, who had never spoken, was now providing critical guidance in a real-world investigation, a responsibility far beyond her years, yet handled with an instinctual intelligence that left them breathless. That evening, Officer Ramirez convened a meeting with Emily and Thomas. He explained the significance of Lily's guidance and Coda's ability to translate her observations into actionable intelligence. "We're entering uncharted territory," he said. "Most investigations rely on witnesses, confessions, or physical evidence left by suspects. In this case, our key witness doesn't speak, but she sees. And Coda interprets. It's extraordinary, but it's also a tremendous responsibility." Emily nodded slowly. "We understand, but we also trust her instincts. She's been guiding us all along in ways we didn't even realize. She notices things adults miss." Thomas added, "We've always worried about her silence, worried that she couldn't communicate. But now we see it's not silence, it's awareness, and it's powerful." Ramirez smiled faintly. "Exactly, and it's why I think we're finally making progress. With Lily and Coda working together, we can start to uncover the patterns and perhaps even identify the person behind the break-ins." As night fell, the Warrens' home grew quiet. Lily, still nestled beside Coda, hummed softly, her fingers tracing the dog's fur. Emily and Thomas lingered in the doorway, watching their daughter breathe evenly, her small chest rising and falling in calm rhythm. The events of the day had revealed something profound. Their daughter's silence was a unique lens through which the world could be interpreted, and Coda had become the perfect intermediary. Outside, Maple Ridge remained unaware of the breakthrough that had occurred that morning. The small town, tranquil in appearance, was now the backdrop for a mystery in which a silent toddler and a police dog had taken the lead, unraveling a puzzle that had confounded adults for weeks. Emily whispered to Thomas, her voice barely audible, "She's not just our daughter, she's a guide, and now the world is going to see what she can do." Thomas nodded, a mixture of awe and anxiety crossing his face. "And we have to protect her and trust her. That's going to be the hardest part." In that moment, the Warrens understood an undeniable truth. The key to solving the break-ins, and perhaps uncovering something far more significant, lay not in conventional investigation alone, but in the extraordinary connection between their daughter and a dog trained to understand her silent language. It was a partnership that defied logic, yet worked with precision, intuition, and instinct. Maple Ridge, still oblivious, was about to witness events that would reveal the depth of the mystery and the extraordinary abilities of the child who had never spoken. And for Lily Warren, the silent toddler who had guided Coda with unerring accuracy, this was just the beginning, a prelude to a series of revelations that would challenge the town's perception of innocence, observation, and courage. That night, as Emily and Thomas tucked Lily into bed, she gazed toward the window, then toward Coda, who lay curled near the door. Her small fingers brushed the dog's fur one last time before sleep overtook her. Emily whispered, "Good night, my brave girl. You're amazing." Lily hummed softly in response, her eyes closing slowly, her mind processing, observing, and understanding more than anyone could have imagined. And in that quiet, unassuming bedroom, the stage was set for the next chapter of a story that would test instincts, intelligence, and the power of a silent voice guided by unwavering loyalty. The following morning, Maple Ridge was bathed in a cold, pale sunlight, the streets empty except for the occasional delivery truck or dog walker. Yet the stillness outside the Warrens' home belied the intensity that had taken hold within. Emily moved quietly through the kitchen, glancing nervously at the living room where Lily sat cross-legged on the carpet, eyes sharp and focused, as if the events of the previous days had sharpened her perception beyond her years. Thomas, already sipping coffee, leaned against the counter. "She's different today," he said quietly. "Not just more aware, I think she's anticipating things." Emily nodded. "She's always been observant, but now it's like she sees patterns where we see nothing. Coda must sense it too, because he hasn't left her side since morning." Officer Ramirez arrived mid-morning, Coda trotting beside him with his usual composed yet alert demeanor. Ramirez's expression was serious, almost taut with concern. "Yesterday was a breakthrough," he said quietly, glancing at the Warrens. "But today we need to focus. I want to see if we can identify patterns in the intruder's behavior, places, times, even psychological tendencies. Lily may be able to help, given her unique perspective." Emily swallowed, unease twisting in her stomach. "You mean put her through it again?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Thomas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We just follow her lead, she's ready, and Coda will protect her." Lily seemed to sense the shift in energy. She stood immediately as Ramirez opened the door, moving toward Coda with a determined gait. Her small hand rested on his back, and he responded instantly, standing tall, tail stiff, ears forward, as if preparing for a mission he fully understood but kept silent. Emily and Thomas followed cautiously, hearts pounding with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The team began a systematic sweep of the neighborhood, starting at the shed in the Warrens' backyard where the stolen items had been discovered. Lily led Coda through the yard, tapping her fingers at small irregularities, a disturbed patch of dirt near the fence, a slightly bent branch along the tree line, a leaf out of place on the pathway. Coda sniffed each spot carefully, reacting with soft whines or small barks, confirming her intuition. Emily whispered to Thomas, "She's reading the environment. She notices what's out of place, the tiniest details. It's like she has her own radar." Thomas nodded, watching his daughter with a mixture of pride and worry. And Coda translates it. "This is incredible and terrifying." As they moved toward the back of the property, Lily froze again, crouching low and pointing toward a distant alley between two houses. Coda's head shot up, ears twitching, and he began moving cautiously in the direction indicated. Ramirez followed, careful not to disturb the trail, and noticed faint footprints on the frosted ground, tracks too small to be adult, but leading unmistakably toward the edge of the woods. "Good observation, Lily," Ramirez murmured, though she did not respond verbally. Her eyes remained fixed on the path, her fingers tapping on Coda's fur, subtly guiding him. The dog moved in perfect tandem with her gestures, sniffing the ground, pausing at every irregularity, and alerting Ramirez when evidence was discovered. A small glove, a dropped keychain, faint scratch marks on a fence post. Emily and Thomas exchanged anxious glances. "She's doing it again," Emily whispered, "leading us directly to the evidence." Thomas swallowed hard. "We just need to follow her. She knows what she's doing more than we do." The trail led them deeper into the woods, twisting and turning, a labyrinth of shadows and frost-covered leaves. Lily's concentration never wavered, and Coda remained alert, nose close to the ground, ears forward, occasionally letting out a soft warning growl. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The woods, which had seemed peaceful during daytime walks, now felt like a stage for something calculated and deliberate. As they rounded a bend, Lily froze abruptly. She crouched, eyes wide, fingers pointing toward a tree whose trunk bore a faint, almost imperceptible mark, a scratch shallow but deliberate. Coda sniffed the base of the tree and growled softly. Ramirez crouched beside him, examining the mark. "Interesting," he said. "This could be a sign, a symbol left intentionally. Whoever did this knows these woods well. This isn't random." Emily's chest tightened. "She saw it, she noticed the detail before we did." Thomas nodded gravely. "She's noticing patterns, the intruder's habits, maybe even their thinking. This is beyond a child her age." Lily tapped the ground twice, then pointed further into the woods. Coda immediately resumed his cautious march, following the invisible cues she provided. Emily and Thomas followed closely, each step careful, minds racing. The trail led to a small clearing where the frost had melted in patches, revealing more subtle footprints, some adult, some small, all interweaving in a deliberate pattern that suggested a series of carefully planned break-ins. Ramirez examined the evidence, taking notes and photographing the tracks. "This pattern, it's consistent," he said quietly. "The intruder strikes during early morning or late evening, targets homes with specific vulnerabilities, and uses hidden paths to move between locations unnoticed. Lily has guided us to the exact points where we can trace these movements. We wouldn't have discovered this without her. Emily whispered, "She's extraordinary," and Coda, "He's interpreting her instincts perfectly." Thomas's jaw tightened. "We have to protect her. The next step might be dangerous." The group moved deeper, following Lily's gestures and Coda's alerts. Suddenly, she froze again, her tiny body tense, eyes scanning a cluster of trees ahead. Her finger pointed insistently toward a fallen log partially concealed under leaves. Coda approached cautiously, sniffing the log's underside, and let out a low, warning growl. Ramirez peered under the log and discovered a small backpack, partially hidden, containing more stolen items. Photographs, trinkets, and even a few tools that could have been used to gain access to homes. Emily's heart raced. "She found it, all of it," she whispered. Thomas nodded, voice tight. "She sees the connections, the hidden spots. She's mapping it all in her mind." As they continued, Lily's gestures grew more purposeful, guiding Coda to subtle markers, bent twigs, faint scuff marks, and displaced leaves. Ramirez began to piece together a map of the intruder's behavior and movements, relying almost entirely on the silent cooperation between Toddler and dog. The patterns became clearer. The intruder was methodical, calculating, and familiar with both the homes and the terrain of Maple Ridge. By late afternoon, they had traced the intruder's movements to a secluded area at the edge of the woods where a small, abandoned shack stood. Coda paused at the entrance, growling softly, ears forward, tail stiff. Lily tapped him lightly, signaling to approach carefully. Ramirez and the Warrens exchanged wary glances. The shack was hidden from the road, obscured by trees, and could have easily served as a base for someone to plan or store stolen items. Emily whispered to Thomas, "This is it, this has to be it." Thomas nodded, swallowing hard. "Stay close to her. Coda's here, but we need to be careful." Inside the shack, shadows pooled in corners and the faint smell of dust and wood filled the air. Coda moved silently, sniffing every inch, while Lily guided him with small gestures, tapping his fur or pointing to objects of interest. Officer Ramirez followed closely, flashlight in hand, documenting everything. Beneath a stack of old crates, Coda alerted with a soft bark. Lily pointed emphatically, then crouched slightly, tapping the floor twice. Ramirez carefully moved the crates and discovered a hidden compartment containing stolen items from homes across Maple Ridge: toys, photographs, trinkets, and small personal belongings. The meticulous organization suggested someone who took care in their work, leaving no trace for casual observers. Emily knelt beside Lily, brushing a strand of hair from her eyes. "You did it. You led us here," she whispered, awestruck. Lily hummed softly, a small smile tugging at her lips, then looked at Coda as if to say, "We did it together." Thomas placed a hand on his wife's shoulder. "She's incredible, and we have to protect her. Whatever comes next, we need to stay close." Officer Ramirez nodded. "We've traced the intruder's patterns, uncovered the stash, and have tangible evidence now. But the real breakthrough is this. Lily's observations and Coda's instincts have revealed the intruder's methods. Whoever this is, they're deliberate, careful, and familiar with the town. We're closing in." As night fell over Maple Ridge, the Warrens returned home, exhausted but exhilarated. Lily, curled beside Coda, hummed softly as if recounting the day's discoveries in her own private language. Emily and Thomas watched, hearts full of pride and concern, understanding that their daughter's silence was not a weakness but a unique form of intelligence that had guided them through the shadows and into clarity. Maple Ridge, still unaware of the breakthrough that had occurred that day, would soon face the reality that a toddler and a police dog had unraveled the method and movements of a criminal whose stealth had eluded adults for weeks. And for Lily Warren, the silent child whose gestures had revealed a pattern invisible to others, the discovery marked a turning point, one that would bring them closer to the truth and test their courage in ways they had never imagined. Emily whispered to Thomas as they tucked Lily into bed. "She's seeing more than anyone else and guiding us all." Thomas nodded, voice low, eyes heavy with emotion. "And Coda, he's her partner in this. Together, they're unstoppable. But we need to be ready. The next step could be dangerous." As Lily drifted to sleep, her small hand resting on Coda's fur, the Warrens understood the truth. The mystery was far from over, but the silent toddler had become the key to uncovering it. And Maple Ridge, once a quiet and predictable town, was about to witness a story unlike any it had seen before. A story of courage, intuition, and the extraordinary bond between a child and a dog. The night was unusually still in Maple Ridge, the kind of stillness that felt heavy, almost watchful. The town, unaware of the discoveries made in the woods earlier that day, lay blanketed under a thin layer of frost, as if nature itself were holding its breath. Inside the Warrens' home, however, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Lily had slept fitfully, murmuring softly in her sleep, small fingers twitching as though following invisible threads in her mind. Coda, ever vigilant, lay curled beside her, ears twitching, sensing the subtle tension in the air. Emily and Thomas exchanged worried glances as they prepared for the evening operation. Officer Ramirez had planned a careful approach. Tonight, with Lily and Coda's guidance, they would attempt to track the intruder to a location where they could apprehend him, or at least observe him in action. The Warrens' home had become a command center, the kitchen table strewn with maps, notes, and photographs of evidence discovered over the past days. "This is going to be risky," Ramirez said, his voice low, serious. "We can't predict the intruder's movements completely, but Lily's observations and Coda's instincts have given us something no one else has, a pattern. If we follow it carefully, we have a chance to catch him tonight." Emily swallowed hard, worry tightening in her chest. "He's dangerous," she whispered. Thomas nodded. "I know, but Lily, she's ready. And Coda will protect her. We just need to stay close." Lily, dressed in a warm jacket and snug boots, stood at the edge of the living room, small hand resting firmly on Coda's back. Her eyes were sharp and alert, scanning the street outside as though anticipating movement. When Ramirez gently opened the door to the yard, she stepped forward without hesitation. Coda responded instantly, moving alongside her with careful precision. The team moved through the quiet streets, avoiding main roads, following the path that Lily had indicated with her gestures. Each tap of her tiny finger or shift in her stance guided Coda, and he responded with uncanny accuracy, sniffing, pausing, and alerting the team to subtle traces invisible to human eyes. Emily and Thomas followed closely, hearts pounding, knowing that tonight could bring them face to face with the intruder. As they approached the edge of the woods, Lily suddenly froze, her body stiffening, eyes fixed on a shadow near the tree line. Coda stopped instantly, ears forward, growl low in his throat. The air seemed to thrum with tension. Ramirez held up a hand, signaling for silence. Emily's grip tightened on Thomas's arm. "She sees him," Emily whispered. Thomas nodded, barely breathing. "And Coda does too." Slowly the group moved closer, staying low and using the cover of the trees. Lily crouched slightly, small fingers pointing toward the shadowy figure. A man hunched over near the ground, moving with deliberate care, arranging small items along a hidden path. Coda sniffed the air, letting out a soft, warning bark. The intruder, unaware of the approach, continued his work, meticulous and focused. Ramirez signaled to the Warrens to remain hidden. He crept closer, flashlight dimmed, observing the man's behavior. The intruder's movements revealed an unsettling familiarity with the neighborhood, a precision that spoke of practice and intention. The stolen items were being organized for collection or transport, evidence of planning, patience, and a willingness to risk exposure for profit or some unknown motive. Suddenly the man paused, ears twitching as if sensing something amiss. Coda growled low and steadily, and Lily tapped him twice, then crouched, signaling for him to approach carefully. The dog moved forward silently, nose low, eyes alert. The intruder's head snapped up, eyes scanning the shadows. For a tense heartbeat, everything was frozen, time stretching into a taut, silent thread. And then, as if sensing the presence of something extraordinary, the man bolted, sprinting toward a path leading deeper into the woods. Coda barked sharply, giving chase, with Lily following as quickly as her small legs could carry her. Ramirez and the Warrens pursued, hearts pounding, adrenaline surging. The cold night air bit at their faces, but fear and determination propelled them forward. The intruder zigzagged through the trees, clearly attempting to lose his pursuers. Yet Coda's instincts, guided by Lily's keen observations, proved unmatched. The dog navigated the uneven terrain with ease, following faint traces of scent and motion that the human eye could not detect. Lily, small but determined, pointed and tapped, guiding Coda through hidden obstacles, fallen branches, shallow streams, and frost-covered rocks. Emily and Thomas struggled to keep up, but their concern for Lily's safety never wavered. "Stay close to her," Emily shouted over her shoulder. "Don't let him get away." Thomas nodded, scanning the woods for the intruder, praying for their daughter's safety. The chase led to a small clearing, where the intruder stumbled over a root and fell to the ground. Coda, trained for apprehension but restrained by Ramirez, approached cautiously, growling, muscles coiled, ready to act on command. Lily pointed decisively at the man, her small body rigid with authority. Ramirez stepped forward, hand on his radio, ready to summon backup. "Freeze!" Ramirez shouted. The intruder scrambled to his feet, panic evident in his eyes, but Coda advanced, low growl warning him against further movement. Lily's tiny finger remained pointed, unwavering, as if directing the operation herself. The man paused, looking from Ramirez to Coda to Lily. For a moment, confusion and fear contorted his features. He attempted to flee again, but Coda lunged, nipping at his leg, forcing him to the ground. Ramirez moved swiftly, restraining the intruder while keeping an eye on Lily. Emily rushed forward, pulling her daughter close, relief flooding her voice. "You're safe," she whispered, hugging Lily tightly. Thomas knelt beside them, staring at the restrained intruder in disbelief. She helped catch him. Lily remained calm, small fingers resting gently on Coda's fur, her eyes reflecting the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The Warrens realized, in that instant, that their daughter's silence had never been a limitation. It had been a conduit for extraordinary perception and action. Ramirez handcuffed the man and radioed for backup. "We've got him," he reported. "Thanks to, well, the child and the dog, actually. Unbelievable, but it worked." Emily and Thomas exchanged stunned glances, barely able to comprehend the magnitude of what had just occurred. As the intruder was led away, the Warrens examined the area, noting the careful arrangement of stolen items and the deliberate patterns left behind. Ramirez explained that these details would be crucial for prosecution and for understanding the intruder's motivations. "Without Lily and Coda, we'd still be piecing this together blindly," he said. Emily crouched beside Lily, brushing her hair from her face. "You were amazing," she whispered. "You helped stop him, you saved our town." Lily hummed softly, pressing her small hand against Coda's side. Thomas placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We've always known you were special," he said, voice thick with emotion. "But tonight, you were extraordinary." The Warrens returned home, exhausted but elated. The intruder had been caught, the stolen items recovered, and the town's mystery finally solved, thanks to the extraordinary partnership between a toddler and a police dog. Yet the experience left Emily and Thomas both proud and wary. They understood that their daughter's abilities were exceptional, powerful, and potentially dangerous if misunderstood. As they tucked Lily into bed that night, she gazed at Coda, tiny fingers brushing his fur. Emily whispered, "You've done something incredible, my brave girl. You've helped protect our town." Lily hummed softly, eyes closing slowly. Thomas kissed the top of her head. "And we'll be with you always, no matter what." Outside, Maple Ridge remained oblivious to the extraordinary events that had unfolded. The quiet streets held no hint of the suspense, danger, and courage displayed that night in the woods. The town, once unaware of the intruder lurking in its midst, was now safe, thanks to the remarkable intuition of a silent toddler and the unwavering loyalty of a police dog. Emily and Thomas sat in the living room, finally allowing themselves to exhale. "We can't believe it," Emily said softly. She really did it." Thomas nodded. "She's not just our daughter, she's a force, and with Coda, there's nothing they can't handle." Ramirez, still on site to ensure the evidence was secured, smiled faintly. "I've worked with K-9 units and witnesses for years, but this is something else entirely. A silent child directing a trained police dog to apprehend a criminal, unprecedented and utterly brilliant." The night settled over Maple Ridge, the frost glinting faintly in the moonlight. Inside the Warrens' home, a silent bond, one of trust, courage, and instinct, had proven more powerful than anyone could have imagined. Lily, small but infinitely perceptive, had guided Coda, helped stop a criminal, and revealed the extraordinary depth of her awareness. And in the quiet aftermath, the Warrens understood one undeniable truth. Their daughter's silence was not a limitation, but a gift, a guide through darkness, shadows, and danger. The town had been saved, the intruder apprehended, and a new chapter of heroism had been written. But for the Warrens, the story was far from over. They had witnessed the extraordinary power of perception, loyalty, and courage, and they knew that Lily's journey alongside Coda was only just beginning. Maple Ridge awoke the next morning under a soft blanket of sunlight, the town streets glistening with frost and dew. To most residents, it seemed an ordinary day, calm and unremarkable. Yet for the Warrens, the previous night had changed everything. The quiet toddler who had never spoken, the child who had guided a police dog with instinct and precision, had revealed the extraordinary in the ordinary. Lily had become more than their daughter. She was now a symbol of courage, perception, and unspoken wisdom. Emily moved quietly through the kitchen preparing breakfast, the aroma of toast and coffee filling the air. Thomas sat at the table, still carrying the exhaustion and adrenaline from the night before. "She's asleep longer than usual," he said softly, a note of awe in his voice. "Even after all that, the chase, the confrontation, she's just resting." Emily smiled faintly, watching her daughter through the doorway. "She's small, but she carries so much inside her. And Coda, he stayed right by her side, didn't he?" Thomas nodded, a trace of pride in his voice. "He never left her, not once. They're unstoppable together." Downstairs, Officer Ramirez was busy filing reports and coordinating with local authorities. The intruder, apprehended the previous night, had been identified as a local man with a history of minor thefts and a disturbing tendency toward meticulous planning. The recovered items were being cataloged, and the neighbors whose belongings had been taken were beginning to understand the scale of the criminal's actions. Ramirez took a quiet moment to reflect on the unique circumstances that had led to the arrest. "I've been a police officer for over 20 years, he said softly, speaking to himself as much as anyone else. "I've worked with witnesses, evidence, and K-9 units, but never like this. A silent child guiding a trained dog, it's unheard of. And yet here we are. The town is safe and the evidence is solid. Incredible." Meanwhile, the Warrens gathered in the living room, the first morning calm allowing them to process the events. Emily reached for Thomas's hand, a mixture of relief and lingering fear evident in her eyes. "It's over," she whispered, and she did it all. Thomas squeezed her hand, his gaze drawn toward the stairwell where Lily slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling in rhythm with her soft breaths. "Yes," he said quietly, "and she did it with courage, clarity, and Coda right there with her. We've never seen anything like it, and we probably never will again." As the morning wore on, neighbors began to emerge, murmuring about the recovered items, the apprehended intruder, and the unlikely heroes behind the resolution. Rumors spread quickly. A silent child and her loyal dog had led the police to the criminal's hiding place, uncovering stolen treasures and patterns that adults had overlooked. Though many found it hard to believe, Officer Ramirez confirmed the story. nodding that the Warrens' home had become the starting point of an investigation that had captivated the town without anyone fully realizing it. Lily stirred from her sleep, small eyes blinking as sunlight filtered through her window. Coda, loyal as ever, nudged her gently, tail thumping softly. Emily and Thomas watched as their daughter stretched, small hands brushing her hair from her face. She rose slowly, moving toward Coda, and they shared a quiet moment, silent yet filled with understanding. Emily knelt beside her. "Good morning, my brave girl," she whispered. "You helped save our town. You were amazing." Lily hummed softly, fingers brushing Coda's fur, her silent language conveying a pride and calm that words could not capture. Thomas crouched beside them, voice gentle. "We're so proud of you. What you did, it's extraordinary, and we're so grateful to Coda for keeping you safe always." The dog responded with a soft whine, pressing his head against Lily's side, his eyes reflecting both devotion and understanding. The Warrens spent the day reflecting on the events that had transformed their lives. Emily and Thomas realized that their daughter's silence was not a limitation, but a unique strength, an innate ability to observe, understand, and communicate in ways that defied conventional expectations. Lily had not only guided Coda and Officer Ramirez to the intruder, but had also revealed patterns and behaviors that adults had missed entirely. News of the incident spread beyond Maple Ridge. Local reporters came to interview Officer Ramirez, neighbors, and eventually the Warrens themselves. They spoke of a remarkable bond between a toddler and a dog, a silent partnership that had solved a mystery and restored peace to a small town. Emily and Thomas handled the attention cautiously, protecting Lily while acknowledging the extraordinary events. At the same time, Maple Ridge's residents began to see their own community differently. They marveled at the courage of a child who had never spoken, who had silently guided authorities to justice, and at the loyalty and intelligence of a police dog who had trusted that guidance implicitly. The story became one of quiet heroism, a tale of instincts, trust, and the power of observation. As evening fell, the Warrens gathered in the living room, Lily curled beside Coda, the dog resting his head on her lap. Emily watched her daughter's small fingers trace Coda's fur, thinking of the journey that had brought them here, from unexplained disappearances and mysterious intruder activity to the dramatic confrontation and ultimate resolution. Thomas broke the silence. "You know," he said softly, "tonight when she points and guides him, it's like she has her own compass, her own sense of direction that no one else can see." Emily nodded. "It's true, and the way Coda follows her, it's like they communicate on a level we'll never fully understand, but it works. It really works." Lily looked up, small eyes meeting theirs, her gaze steady and serene. She reached toward Coda, who nudged her gently, tail thumping in approval. No words were needed. In that moment, everything, the fear, the courage, the mystery, the triumph, was conveyed through silence, through trust, through an unspoken bond that transcended ordinary understanding. Ramirez visited the Warrens that evening one last time before returning to his duties. He knelt beside Lily, offering a gentle smile. "I don't think I've ever seen anything like this," he said quietly. "Your instincts, your guidance, it helped stop a criminal and recover stolen items. It's incredible. Maple Ridge owes you a debt it doesn't fully understand." Lily tapped his hand lightly, her way of acknowledging his words. Coda leaned into her side, protective and alert as always. Emily and Thomas exchanged glances, understanding that this night marked a turning point not only for their town but also for their family. Lily had shown that courage and intelligence come in all forms, that silence can speak volumes, and that bonds of trust, between child and dog, parent and child, can create extraordinary outcomes. Later, as they prepared for bed, Emily reflected on the journey they had all undergone. "It's remarkable," she whispered to Thomas. "We've learned so much about her, about Coda, about trust, and about what's possible when someone sees the world differently." Thomas nodded. "And it's only the beginning. She's capable of so much, and we have to nurture it, protect it, and trust it. That's the lesson." Lily, already drifting into sleep, rested beside Coda, her small hand brushing his fur one last time. Emily and Thomas watched her, hearts full of awe and love. They understood that their daughter's silence had never been a limitation. It had been her strength, her lens for interpreting the world, and a gift that had guided them all through shadows, danger, and uncertainty. Maple Ridge, still unaware of the depth of heroism that had taken place, returned to its quiet routine. But the town had been changed, subtly and irrevocably, by the courage of a silent toddler and her loyal companion. Neighbors began to tell the story in hushed tones, children in the town whispering about the brave little girl who had led a police dog to catch a criminal, and the adults quietly marveling at the extraordinary partnership. As the Warrens' home settled into silence, Emily whispered one final time, "You're our hero, Lily," Thomas added softly, "and you always will be." Coda, sensing the emotion, rested his head gently on Lily's lap, eyes soft and watchful. In that quiet, moonlit room, the Warrens understood the profound truth of the past days. Courage and intelligence are not measured by words alone, and the strongest bonds are often silent, unwavering, and built on trust. Lily had shown them a world beyond ordinary perception, a world where instincts, observation, and loyalty combine to create heroes in the most unexpected forms. The night passed peacefully. Maple Ridge slept, oblivious yet safe, the threat neutralized, and its quiet hero nestled in the safety of her home. Emily and Thomas, exhausted but content, finally allowed themselves to rest, knowing that their daughter's extraordinary gift had preserved their town, protected their family, and revealed a truth far more profound than anyone could have imagined: that sometimes the smallest, quietest voice carries the greatest power. As dawn approached, the first light of a new day touched the frost-covered streets, casting long shadows and golden highlights across Maple Ridge. Inside the Warrens' home, a toddler slept peacefully, a loyal police dog curled protectively by her side, and a family finally embraced the calm after a storm of danger, discovery, and courage. And for those who would one day hear the story, it would remain a tale of quiet heroes, unspoken brilliance, and the extraordinary bond that had saved a town.